In the 10 years that I've been engaged in UN and non-UN peace operations in the Balkans and Africa, I've come to recognize 5 principal prerequisites for success once the decision has been made to engage. They are the mandate, organization, planning and prioritization, including resource allocation, leadership, personnel and political support, and finally an exit strategy, leading to the closure of the mission. Of these, everything starts with the mandate. A clear, credible, and achievable mandate sets the pace for all that follows. The appropriate force size and composition, the rules of engagement, the resource intensity, the promises of what will hopefully be an avalanche of activity. It stands to reason that a confusing mandate will only lead to confusion on the ground. UNPROFOR in the Balkans had some 70 Security Council resolutions, dozens of presidential statements. Political negotiation authority was split between the UN, the EU, and the contact group. The biggest challenge for any peacekeeper was to understand what he or she was supposed to be actually doing at any given point in time. The Dayton Peace Accords contain no less than 150 pages, divided into 11 annexes, some 40 pages of Peace Implementation Council declarations, 92 post-accession criteria for membership in the Council of Europe, and a raft of further agreements, particularly with the EU and the IPOA. Many of these decisions were never fulfilled. Others never got off the ground, and language in cyberspace were on a series of websites. In contrast, the mandate of UNTAS, the United Nations Transitional Administration Eastern Slavonia, contained just 13 sentences that could be distilled into 6 quantifiable objectives. And UNMID, which was the first international organization of BIH to complete its mandate successfully and leave, worked with 7 resolutions that were further operationalized through what we did a mandate implementation plan. By that I mean, until we did that, no one in the United States mission could tell you, they could tell you why they were there, but they never knew how long they were going to be there, or what the objectives were while they were there, or how successful they were in meeting any of their objectives. So we actually did a mandate. What the hell are we here to do? We're not here to do everything. But whatever we're here to do, we should actually every 3 months take a look and see how far we are in terms of meeting those goals. My point here is twofold. If you start out and you don't know where you're going, you'll probably wind up somewhere else. And secondly, the mandate is always the floor, not the ceiling. I've never let one of those mandates be my ceiling. It's the difference of personality between other chiefs of mission. If the mandate is vague for whatever reason, including the inability of the Security Council members to agree on a political end state, this function will plague the lifespan of the mission. So I've had mandates that were 5.5, I've had mandates that were 6, and I had mandates that were 7. The other issue concerning the mandate is the extent to which it authorizes the use of force. It is a truism to say that the means, including the legal authority, given to the mission must be sufficient to accomplish its goals. But here there appears to be a growing tension between Chapter 7 mandates and the rules of engagement adopted by troop contributing nations, including the rule of force protection. My attitude was always, and I did that in Bosnia, if you shoot at me, I assume you're trying to kill me, and I intend to return the favor. Now the dilemma you have with your troops, they don't necessarily do what you want them to do, obey the orders you give them. And indeed, every day they're on the phone to their capitals after your staff meeting to make sure that what you said needs to be done is actually what their capital approves. And their mandates were different. Some use rubber bullets, some don't. Some fire warning shots, some don't. And you have to have like a chart. What can my troops do here? French, British, Moroccan, Jordanian, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What are actually the mandates of the rule of engagement? Clear organizational structure. This brings me to the second prerequisite for success. Here let me be rather controversial about the relationship between military and civilian components of the mission. The failure of the dual key system in UNPROFOR does not justify the division of a mission into separate and parallel military and civilian chains of command. As Transitional Administrator of UNTAS and Special Representative in Liberia, I had command and control of both civilian parts of the mission and the military force in an integrated organizational concept. That means everything. COM, motor pool, everything you can imagine. I delegated operational control to my force commander. That's another issue. Europe is filled with soldats. Soldats is a French word. It means play at. War paint, staff college, run around in the woods, military observer, military attaché, shot is fired, they wet their pants. Because they haven't fought anyone. Soldats. So you need a real soldier. In Eastern Savonia, I was lucky. I went to see the Belgian Prime Minister and said to him, Mr. Prime Minister, this is not an easy mission. It's religion, it's ethnicity, it's long historical animosity. He said, what the hell do you think I have here in Belgium? I said, well, I came here for a different reason. I came here because I need a force commander. And I don't need a soldat manqué. He said, I have it for you. I've got a paratrooper. He's taciturn. He's difficult to get along with. He's not one of these hail-y-well-met fellows. I said, that's what I need. And I got Lieutenant General Joseph Scoops, who was first rate. Actually, he was a major general when I got him. We got him promoted because the Belgian press came down to Eastern Savonia and said, what do you think of the quality of General Scoops? And I said, in my army, he would have been a lieutenant general 4 years ago. So the next day, every Belgian newspaper said, Special Representative Secretary General says Scoops should be promoted. What the hell else could they do? So they promoted him. But he was gutsy, and in fact, I called him in one day. I said, Joseph, I noticed that you and your aide drive to and from the compound with no helmet, no body armor, without any other escort. He says, Mr. Klein, I will never show those bastards that I'm afraid of them. By contrast, in Bosnia-Herzegovina, the military dimension overwhelmed the civilian aspects of peace building. And IPOA, or as we used to call it, WhatFor, was able to limit and circumscribe its own role to such an extent that civilian implementation arguably became exceedingly difficult. By that I mean I would go to the IPOA commander, one who's lauded here in the press as having made the right predictions on Iraq, and say, a company of Serbs has crossed the border into Bosnia-Herzegovina. They're in violation here of Dayton and every other mandate we have. We need to do something about it. It's not in my rules of engagement. Okay, what is in your rules of engagement? Next thing was Serbs were broadcasting what amounted to fascist propaganda against the international community, the international tribunal. We need to take those towers out. We had this raging argument. The mistake he made, he never looked at my bio. You civilians, you shed the blood of soldiers. Well, you know that argument. So I let him rant and rave for a while. And I said, read my goddamn bio, will you? I was in Vietnam before you were. So in any case, you have that dilemma where they force protection. Jacques, don't screw up my assignment. I'm on my way to Heidelberg or Stuttgart or the Pentagon. Anything like that here could only screw up my onward assignment. Force protection, force protection. So no mission creep was the response to any real calls for action. No mission creep. We're all aware of the failure for all these years to capture the notorious war criminals such as Karadzic and Mladic. We had one general who almost had them. I mean, he put a lot of effort into it. And then Afghanistan came along. Their continued liberty, I think, in spite of everything else you say about Bosnia-Herzegovina, is a dramatic sign of the impotence of the West in the face of evil. Now, you can't tell me that you can't find Karadzic and Mladic somewhere in the Balkans. And I really believe in the old maxim that if you don't punish the guilty, you'll never absolve the innocent. The other point I would make about organizational structure is the question of the effectiveness of multiple organizations working in pillars. The UNTASK mission was fully integrated, as I said. Motor pool, COM, you name it. We sequentially brought in specialist organizations, European Community, Council of Europe, UN volunteers, bilateral donors, for specific tasks according to our overall plan and timetable. The bottom line is ultimately, I don't pay you, you don't work for me. That's what the reality is, which means you cannot ultimately depend on all these organizations to do what the hell you want them to when you're the head of a mission. Because their reporting chain is different. Their onward assignment is not dependent on you. It's dependent on someone else. In contrast, the Dayton Accords mandated an unprecedented number of organizations to work under the weak overall coordinating authority of the High Representative. By ignoring the basic tenet of the unity of command, each, and we had 5 principal organizations, had its own mandate, its own budget, and its own governing body. Created a lot of work for out-of-work European diplomats, but caused a lot of problems for us. The result was a niche mandate implementation, duplication, lack of overall strategic planning. My third prerequisite for success is strategic planning and prioritization, including resource allocation.